How do you turn a simple jawbreaker into wrestling's most satisfying move? How does running into someone become an art form? And why does every single wrestler now think they can throw a super kick just because Shawn Michaels made it look easy? The truth behind wrestling's most iconic finishers reveals a fascinating pattern that most fans completely miss. From the Stone Cold Stunner to modern innovations like Roman's Spear, there's a hidden formula that separates legendary finishers from forgettable ones. The answer might surprise you more than you think. The Stone Cold Stunner. What makes a basic jawbreaker into wrestling's most satisfying move when thousands of wrestlers have tried the same thing? Let's take a look at the Stone Cold Stunner because, on paper, it looks like the easiest finisher to copy. You grab someone's head, hook it under your chin, and sit down. That's it. No complex setup, no athletic ability required, just a simple motion that any wrestler should be able to pull off. However, every wrestler who tries to replicate it looks completely ridiculous compared to Austin's effortless execution. Watch any compilation of wrestlers attempting the stunner and you'll see the difference immediately. They grab the head awkwardly, hesitate during the setup, and the whole thing looks forced. Austin never had that problem because he made the move look as natural as shaking hands. What happened was that Vince McMahon's over-the-top selling made Austin look like he could knock out a rhino with that simple jawbreaker. McMahon would fly backward like he'd been hit by a truck, spinning in the air and crashing to the mat in the most dramatic way possible. Other wrestlers sold it well too, but McMahon's reactions were so extreme that they made the stunner seem devastating. The reality shows Austin's perfect timing and casual confidence that made the move work, not the move itself. Austin would deliver the stunner with this laid-back attitude, like stunning someone was just part of his daily routine. He never rushed it or oversold the setup. The crowd's reaction depended entirely on Austin's personality because they knew Stone Cold could stun anyone at any moment, and he acted like it was no big deal. As a result, the stunner succeeded because Austin made stunning people look as natural as breathing. When other wrestlers tried to copy it, they were missing the most important ingredient, which was Austin's unique character and timing. The move became iconic not because of its mechanics, but because Austin treated it like the most normal thing in the world, while everyone around him acted like they'd been struck by lightning. So as you can see, even the simplest moves can become legendary when the right wrestler uses them with the right attitude. The Rock Bottom and People's Elbow. How did The Rock turn removing an elbow pad into more drama than most wrestlers' entire matches? Let's take a look at what made The Rock's finishing moves so special, because the Rock Bottom seems like a standard slam, and the People's Elbow is literally just an elbow drop. You can watch any wrestling match and see similar moves that don't get half the reaction. However, The Rock made these basic moves feel more electrifying than high-flying aerial maneuvers that required years of training. What happened was that The Rock understood something most wrestlers miss completely. The move itself doesn't matter as much as how you present it to the crowd. The Rock's theatrical presentation made every gesture feel monumental. When he set up for the Rock Bottom, he would pause, look around the arena, and let the anticipation build. The actual slam was quick, but that build-up made it feel like something big was about to happen. Then came the People's Elbow, where The Rock would dramatically remove his elbow pad, toss it to the crowd, and run the ropes before dropping that simple elbow. The reality shows how charisma can transform ordinary moves into unforgettable moments. The Rock spent more time removing his elbow pad than most wrestlers spend on their entire finishing sequence. He would hold up that pad, make eye contact with the crowd, and create this moment of pure theater. The crowd knew exactly what was coming, but they loved every second of the setup. What's interesting is how The Rock's crowd interaction during the setup became more important than the actual impact. Fans would chant along, anticipate each movement, and react to every gesture. The Rock turned his finishing moves into a conversation with 20,000 people. He would adjust his timing based on their reactions, making each People's Elbow feel unique even though the move never changed. As a result, The Rock proved that personality and presentation matter more than athletic complexity. His moves weren't the most physically impressive, but they created the biggest emotional reactions. Other wrestlers could copy the Rock Bottom or try their own version of an elbow drop, but they couldn't copy The Rock's ability to make the crowd feel like they were part of something special. The Tombstone Piledriver. Why does The Undertaker's upside-down piledriver feel more terrifying than moves that look twice as dangerous? Let's take a look at the Tombstone Piledriver, because mechanically, it's just a basic piledriver with the opponent facing the other direction. Dozens of wrestlers have used regular piledrivers throughout wrestling history, and many of them look more brutal than what The Undertaker was doing. However, The Undertaker's presentation made it feel like a death sentence every single time. What happened was that The Undertaker understood the power of atmosphere and ritual. When he set up for the tombstone, everything changed. The crowd would go silent, waiting for what felt like an execution rather than just another wrestling move. The crossed arms, the tongue, and the ominous buildup made opponents look doomed before The Undertaker even lifted them up. He would grab his opponent, look around the arena with those cold eyes, and cross the opponent's arms over their chest like they were already dead. Then came that tongue, rolling out, which made The Undertaker look less like a wrestler and more like some kind of supernatural force preparing to end someone's career. What's interesting is how opponents had to cooperate in positioning themselves perfectly for their own destruction. The tombstone required the opponent to basically help The Undertaker get them into position, but the presentation made it look like The Undertaker had complete control. Wrestlers would have to jump up and position themselves upside down, essentially assisting in their own defeat, yet it never looked cooperative because of The Undertaker's commanding presence. The move's psychology overshadowed its actual physical impact. The Undertaker made fans believe that being Tombstone meant something more serious than just taking a wrestling move. He created this aura where the Tombstone wasn't just a finisher, it was a judgment. The way he would hold opponents in that upside-down position, letting the blood rush to their heads while the crowd anticipated the impact, turned a simple piledriver into pure theater. As a result, The Undertaker transformed a simple wrestling move into a supernatural ritual. The tombstone became less about athletic ability and more about The Undertaker's character as wrestling's Grim Reaper. Other wrestlers could do piledrivers, but nobody could recreate the fear and anticipation that came with The Undertaker's version. Sweet Chin music. How did Shawn Michaels create wrestling's most copied move and accidentally ruin finishers forever? Let's take a look at Sweet Chin music, because it looks like the most basic move possible. You just kick someone in the face. That's literally it. There's no complex setup, no athletic requirements, and no special training needed. Any wrestler should be able to throw a decent superkick. However, Michaels' version felt devastating, while everyone else's superkicks feel like regular moves. What happened was that Michaels understood timing and presentation in ways that modern wrestlers completely miss. When he set up for Sweet Chin music, the entire arena would hold its breath waiting for that kick. The dramatic foot stomp and theatrical buildup made each kick feel cinematic. Michaels would tune up the band by stomping his foot in the corner, building anticipation with each stomp. The crowd knew what was coming, but that anticipation made it better, not worse. He would wait for the perfect moment when his opponent turned around, then deliver that superkick with perfect timing. The reality shows how modern wrestlers spam superkicks without understanding Michaels' timing and psychology. You can watch any current wrestling show and see wrestlers throwing multiple superkicks in a single match. They use them as regular moves instead of finishers, which completely destroys what made Michaels' version special. These wrestlers think the kick itself was the secret, but they're missing the point entirely. The superkick revolution diluted the impact of what made Michaels' version special. When everyone can throw a superkick, nobody's superkick feels important anymore. Wrestlers today treat superkicks like punches, throwing them whenever they need to create some offense. This approach removes all the drama and anticipation that made Sweet Chin music work. As a result, Michaels created a masterpiece that spawned thousands of inferior imitations. His superkick worked because it was his only superkick. He didn't throw 10 of them per match. When Sweet Chin music connected, the match was over, which gave the move real meaning and importance. So as you can see, copying a move's appearance without understanding its psychology leads to watered-down versions that lack the original's impact. The attitude adjustment. How did John Cena make lifting 300-pound men look as effortless as carrying groceries? Let's take a look at the attitude adjustment, because it's just a fireman's carry slam, one of wrestling's most basic power moves. You can watch any wrestling school and see students learning this move on their first day. It's simple mechanics. Get someone on your shoulders and slam them down. However, Cena's execution made it represent his entire never-give-up character philosophy. What happened was that Cena turned a basic power move into a story about determination and heart. When he lifted opponents onto his shoulders, it wasn't just about showing strength. It was about proving that no matter how beaten down he was, Cena could still find a way to win. Cena's apparent ease in lifting massive opponents made his strength look superhuman. Watch him hoist guys like Big Show or Mark Henry onto his shoulders, and it looks like he's picking up a bag of laundry. The crowd would react with amazement every time because these were guys who outweighed Cena by 100 pounds or more, yet he made it look routine. The reality shows how the move's storytelling power came from Cena's resilience narrative, not the slam itself. The attitude adjustment worked best when Cena was exhausted, beaten down, and seemingly defeated. That's when he would dig deep, find that extra strength, and suddenly lift his opponent for the AA. The move became a symbol of refusing to quit, rather than just a display of power. What's interesting is how Cena used the setup to showcase determination even when exhausted. He would struggle to get opponents on his shoulders, showing the effort it took, which made the eventual lift more impressive. Cena never made it look easy when he was hurt. He made it look like pure willpower was getting the job done. As a result, the AA succeeded because it perfectly embodied Cena's character rather than relying on complexity. The move told the story of someone who wouldn't stay down no matter what happened to him. Other power wrestlers could do fireman's carry slams, but they couldn't recreate the emotional connection between the move and the character that made Cena's version meaningful. The RKO. What makes Randy Orton's cutter the most meme-worthy finisher in wrestling history? Let's take a look at the RKO because it's technically just a jumping cutter, a move dozens of wrestlers have used before. Diamond Dallas Page had the diamond cutter, and plenty of other wrestlers threw similar moves throughout the years. The basic mechanics are simple. Grab someone's head and pull them down while you jump backward. However, Orton's version became synonymous with surprise attacks and viral internet content. What happened was that Orton developed this reputation for hitting the RKO at the most unexpected moments. Fans never knew when it was coming, which made every RKO feel like a genuine surprise, even when they were watching for it. The myth develops through the out-of-nowhere factor that made every RKO feel genuinely shocking. Orton could hit an RKO off the top rope, reverse any move into an RKO, or catch someone mid-air with an RKO. The move became so associated with surprise that fans started expecting the unexpected, which somehow made the surprises even better. The reality shows how Orton's timing and the move's adaptability created countless memorable moments. Unlike finishers that required specific setups, the RKO could happen from almost any position. Orton could reverse a superkick into an RKO, catch someone jumping off the ropes, or hit it during any scramble. This flexibility made the move incredibly dangerous in kayfabe terms. What's interesting is how the RKO spawned an entire internet culture of surprise attack videos. Fans started making compilation videos of RKOs set to different music, editing RKOs into movie scenes, and creating memes around the phrase RKO out of nowhere. The move transcended wrestling and became part of general internet culture. As a result, Orton perfected the art of making a simple move feel unpredictable every single time. Even when fans knew the RKO was coming, Orton found new ways to surprise them with the timing or setup. The move never got old because Orton constantly found fresh ways to deliver it. So as you can see, internet culture can elevate wrestling moves beyond their original context, turning a simple finisher into a cultural phenomenon that reaches far beyond wrestling fans. Spear. How did running straight into someone become one of wrestling's most versatile and devastating finishers? Let's take a look at the spear, because it's literally just tackling someone, something football players do hundreds of times per game. You watch any NFL Sunday and see defensive players spearing quarterbacks and running backs with the same basic motion that wrestlers use as their finishing move. However, Goldberg, Edge, and Roman Reigns each made their versions feel completely different and equally devastating. What happened was that each wrestler brought their own personality and style to this simple concept. Goldberg's spear felt like a freight train collision because he was this intense, explosive character who moved like he was trying to break his opponent in half. The explosive impact and dramatic selling made spears look bone-crushing in ways that real football tackles never do. Edge would set up his spear by stalking his opponent, crouching in the corner and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. His version felt calculated and vicious. Roman's spear came with this war cry and incredible speed that made it look like he was launching himself like a missile. The reality shows how different wrestlers adapted the basic concept to match their unique characters and styles. Goldberg made his spear about raw power and intensity. Edge made his about timing and predator instincts. Roman made his about explosive athleticism and warrior mentality. Same basic move, but three completely different presentations that fit their personalities perfectly. What's interesting is how the spear's simplicity allowed for countless variations while maintaining its core impact. You could hit a spear through the ropes, off the top rope, or catch someone midair. The move worked in any situation because running into someone is such a natural athletic movement. It never looked forced or contrived like some complex finishing moves do. As a result, the spear proves that fundamental athletic movements can be just as effective as complex maneuvers. You don't need to invent some complicated sequence when a basic football tackle can tell the same story about your character's intensity and power. The best spears worked because they felt natural and explosive, not because they were technically difficult to execute. The pedigree. Why does Triple H's most cerebral finisher require his opponents to basically cooperate in their own destruction? Let's take a look at the pedigree because it looks devastating with its double underhook setup and face-first impact. Triple H would hook both arms behind his opponent's back, leaving them completely helpless before driving their face straight into the mat. The visual impact looked brutal and final. However, the move requires perfect timing and opponent cooperation to avoid serious injury. What happened was that opponents had to position themselves perfectly and help control their own fall to prevent neck injuries. They couldn't just go limp like with other finishers. The person taking the pedigree had to actively participate in making the move look good while staying safe. The myth comes from Triple H's methodical character and the move's appearance of total control. Triple H was the cerebral assassin, the guy who thought 3 steps ahead of everyone else. The pedigree fit this character perfectly because it looked like he had completely dominated his opponent. With both arms hooked, the victim appeared helpless and defeated before the impact even happened. The reality shows how the lengthy setup time gave opponents multiple chances to counter if they wanted to. Triple H had to hook both arms, position himself correctly, and then execute the move. That's a lot of steps compared to a quick stunner, or RKO. Any opponent could have easily reversed it by simply not cooperating with the setup. What's interesting is how the pedigree's psychology of inevitability mattered more than its actual execution difficulty. Once Triple H got those arms hooked, fans knew the match was over. It didn't matter that the opponent could have countered it. The presentation made it feel like escape was impossible. Triple H sold the move as the ultimate display of his superiority and control. As a result, the pedigree succeeded through storytelling and character work rather than athletic innovation. The move wasn't particularly impressive from a technical standpoint, but it perfectly represented Triple H as someone who methodically broke down his opponents. The cooperation required actually made the move more effective because it showed Triple H's dominance when opponents couldn't or wouldn't resist the setup. The 619th. How did Rey Mysterio turn swinging around the ropes into one of wrestling's most unique finishing sequences? Let's take a look at the 619 because it requires incredible timing, positioning, and opponent cooperation to execute safely. The opponent has to be perfectly positioned sitting on the middle rope, facing outward at exactly the right height for Mysterio to swing through and kick them in the face. However, Mysterio made this complex sequence look effortless while showcasing his incredible agility. What happened was that Mysterio had this natural grace and timing that made the 619 appear smooth and natural. He would grab the ropes, swing his body through with perfect momentum, and deliver that kick with precision that looked impossible for someone his size. The move's visual spectacle and the crowd's anticipation during the setup created this amazing atmosphere. Fans knew what was coming when they saw an opponent draped over that middle rope. The crowd would start buzzing with excitement, waiting for Mysterio to grab those ropes and swing through for the 619. That anticipation made the move feel special every time. The reality shows how the 619 needed perfect positioning that often looked contrived in slower matches. Opponents had to position themselves on the ropes and wait there while Mysterio set up the move. In matches with good flow, this looked natural. But in slower matches, you could see opponents awkwardly positioning themselves and staying put longer than they should have. What's interesting is how Mysterio's size made the acrobatic elements feel more impressive than when larger wrestlers attempt similar moves. When a 175-pound wrestler swings through the ropes with that kind of speed and precision, it looks incredible. Larger wrestlers who tried similar rope-based moves never had that same visual impact because they couldn't move with Mysterio's agility. As a result, the 619 proved that unique presentation could overcome the obvious cooperation required. Even when fans could see how contrived the setup was, they didn't care because the execution looked so spectacular. Mysterio's natural athleticism and the move's visual appeal made up for any logical problems with the setup. So, as you can see, power-based wrestlers took completely different approaches to impressive finishers, focusing on raw strength rather than acrobatic precision. Batista Bomb. What made Batista's powerbomb feel more devastating than the countless other powerbomb variations in wrestling? Let's take a look at the Batista Bomb, because it's mechanically identical to dozens of other powerbombs used throughout wrestling history. You lift someone up, hold them above your head, and slam them down on their back. Kevin Nash had the jackknife, The Undertaker had Last Ride, and plenty of other big men used similar power moves. However, Batista's version felt uniquely brutal through sheer force and dramatic presentation. What happened was that Batista brought this raw intensity that made his powerbomb look like it could break someone in half. When he lifted opponents above his head, you could see the strain in his muscles and the determination in his face. He made it look like pure violence instead of just another wrestling move. Batista's obvious strength advantage and the thunderous impact of his slams created this myth that his powerbomb was somehow more dangerous than everyone else's. The guy was massive, with arms like tree trunks and this explosive power that made lifting 250-pound wrestlers look easy. When he slammed someone down, the ring would shake and the impact sounded devastating. The reality shows how Batista's size and intensity made a common move feel fresh and devastating. Other wrestlers threw power bombs with technical precision or smooth execution. Batista threw his like he was trying to put someone through the ring. His facial expressions during the move showed this controlled rage that made fans believe he was genuinely trying to hurt his opponent. What's interesting is how the move's simplicity worked perfectly for Batista's character as this unstoppable force. While other wrestlers were doing complex sequences and acrobatic moves, Batista just picked people up and slammed them down with brutal efficiency. There was something terrifying about that straightforward approach to ending matches. As a result, the Batista Bomb proved that sometimes raw power and presence matter more than innovation. You didn't need to invent new moves when you could execute a classic one with such force and intensity that it felt completely different. Batista understood that his strength was his greatest asset, and he used the powerbomb to showcase that advantage perfectly. Modern-era innovation. How do today's wrestlers create new finishers when every possible move seems to have been done before? Let's take a look at modern-era innovation, because wrestlers like Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins face the challenge of standing out in wrestling's most crowded era. With decades of wrestling history and thousands of moves already used, finding something fresh seems almost impossible. However, they've managed to create signature moves that feel both familiar and completely their own. What happened was that these wrestlers understood they didn't need to reinvent wrestling completely. Instead, they took proven concepts and added their own personality and presentation to make them work. The myth suggests that modern finishers are more athletic and innovative than classic moves. Fans often think that today's wrestlers need to do more flips, jumps, and complex sequences to stand out from what came before. This thinking assumes that newer automatically means better or more impressive. The reality shows how today's finishers still rely on the same principles of character and presentation that made classics work. Roman's spear builds directly on what Goldberg and Edge did before him, But Roman added his own war cry and explosive speed that makes his version feel different. He understood that the spear worked as a concept, so he didn't change the move itself. He changed how he presented it. Seth's stomp follows the same approach by taking a simple concept and making it his own through character work. The move is just jumping and stomping on someone's head, but Seth's presentation makes it feel like a calculated assassination. He calls it the stomp, sets it up with this intense focus, and delivers it with precision that fits his character perfectly. What's interesting is how both moves build on proven foundations while adding personal touches that reflect each wrestler's personality. Roman's spear showcases his explosive athleticism and warrior mentality. Seth's stomp demonstrates his methodical approach and technical precision. As a result, modern finishers succeed by understanding what made classics work rather than abandoning those principles. The best modern wrestlers don't try to completely reinvent finishing moves. They take what works and make it their own through presentation and character development. So as you can see, finishers define wrestlers more than championships or storylines because they become the lasting image fans remember. So as you can see, great finishers succeed through character and presentation, not athletic complexity. The Stone Cold Stunner worked because of Austin's attitude, not because it was technically difficult. The Rock's moves became legendary through pure charisma. The Undertaker made a simple piledriver terrifying through presentation alone. What's interesting is how finishers become more memorable than championship reigns because they define wrestler identities. Fans remember Stone Cold stunning Vince McMahon more than most title wins. They remember The Rock's theatrical elbow pad removal better than his championship celebrations. Wrestling's most important moments happen in those final seconds when the match ends. Like and subscribe for 1,000 years of luck.